Welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. We'll guide you through the ups and downs of note investing and teach you all about the nitty-gritty details of the business that other people won't talk about. Your host, Dan Deppen, is a former aerospace engineer and product manager who transitioned away from cubicle life to full-time note investing in 2018. Our website is www.fusionnotes.com, where you can subscribe to this podcast, comment, and find links to other information on note investing.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Deppen, and today I'm joined by Dickie Baldwin again from Baldwin Advisory Group. So how's it going, Dickie?
Doing great, Dan. Yourself? You're smiling.
Yeah, not too bad. So I'm doing good. It's been, just hectic. All kinds of little things coming up.
You must have shot a 62 on the golf course. That's why you're smiling.
No, I've never done that, but it's been getting better. I actually had a golf lesson 2 days ago. So I'm working on it. I have had a 72 and 74 recently, but not in the 60s. So
you'll get there.
Yeah, eventually, hopefully. So cool. Well, thanks again for joining. I know you've been on a couple times. You had some, kind of BPOs and O&E reports to walk through, but maybe you could tell people a little bit about your business and what you do if folks who aren't familiar with you already.
Absolutely. And hello, everybody in podcast land. I'm Dickie Baldwin with Baldwin Advisory Group. And a little bit about myself. I've been in the real estate financial world for about 40 years now. Have done everything from be a real estate agent to a loan originator to broker lending, wholesale lending, correspondent lending, set up several net branch operations for the mortgage industry around the country, been in the title business as well as being an investor. So I've been in your shoes and I understand some of the hurdles that you need, that you'll be facing to become successful. And so after retiring in 2018, because I had turned 70, in fact, Dan was at a mastermind where I kicked Baldwin Advisory Group off for investors, especially new investors that just don't know where to go to get something done. Plus I hear terminologies of BPO, O&E. Oh my God, what is all this kind of stuff? So Baldwin Advisory Group, after being retired for 3 days in 2018, and once again being 70, I basically reached out to the different vendors that I have worked with throughout the years and put BAG together. Baldwin Advisory Group, BAG, and our slogan is one bag for all your real estate services. So with that being said, the concept was a brand new investor may do 3 or 4 BPOs, broker price opinions, in a year. Well, BAG does literally hundreds throughout the year. And so that gives the brand new investor and even the more seasoned investors, such as yourself, to come to BAG to do a broker price opinion or to do a title search or to do a property condition report, or if you need collateral review, or if you need a servicing company, or if you want to open up an LLC. I mean, all of these services are part of the BAG network. So if you'd like, I'll share the screen with you and pull up a little PowerPoint that I put together to maybe help explain some of the due diligence that is really, really needed for the new investor, as well as my website.
Yeah, that sounds good. And so like some of the folks will be audio only. So I'll just kind of talk through like some of the details so that people aren't missing much if they're not on.
So let's talk about what some of these different items are. When you go to the BAG website, you'll be able to see you can do a BPO, you can do a title search. Well, for instance, what is a BPO? BPO is a broker price opinion that's done by a licensed agent within the subject's area. Now, you can get online, pull up a city, try and find a realtor that will go out and do a BPO for you, or broker price opinion. And a BPO is where actual pictures are taken of the subject property, and then 3 recently sold comps within the neighborhood through the MLS, as well as 3 current listings are put into the BPO. And with all of that information, the BPO, or broker price opinion, will give you an as is value. And we'll go through a sample of one. And then if there's any exterior visible damages that the agent sees, then they're able to give what's called an ARV, or after repair value, keeping in mind that a real estate agent is not a contractor, but through their experience, they're able to give an estimate of what the repairs would be.
And how does that differ from like a Zillow estimate that somebody would pull up?
Number one, it's great for a quick glance, but in my experience, it's not always up to date in information. Whereas BPO is real time. You order it on Monday, they go out Monday or Tuesday, take the pictures, put the product together. It then goes through a quality control review, and keeping in mind that if the appraiser review board doesn't agree with what the agent has come up with, they will send it back for revisions. And that's the great part about utilizing BAG versus trying to get on the internet and find a local realtor, because number one, most agents don't like doing a BPO, and most of them don't have the forms to properly show everything about the property. That they can do an automated CMA, market analysis, but it's not quite like a BPO.
Right. I think the key is they're getting eyes on it, right? Like,
sorry?
And I think the key with the BPO is they're going out and taking photos and getting their eyes on it, because there can be a massive variability in condition.
Absolute. And in that Zillow, if it's not updated, then Zillow doesn't know if that property has been sold or not. So, and the other thing about utilizing BAG is these agents are vetted through our third-party vendors, and their job is to go out and do one thing and one thing only, and that's to get a value, not to try and get a listing. So that is huge in the fact that you have an extra set of eyes also by going through the third-party vendor, because it goes through the quality control. So, for example, and unfortunately some folks aren't going to have the presentation, but what I have,
that's okay, we can talk to it. Yeah.
Okay. You have a sample of a broker price opinion that was done for a client, and this happens to be in Indiana. The one thing I want to emphasize on a BPO, because of COVID, because of agents' own safety, many of these properties may be vacant, And so an agent is not going to walk up to the windows and see if it's occupied or walk into the backyard. They are instructed, as I said, primarily for their own safety, not to approach the property. So
Yeah, that's a good call out, right? Because like a BPO that you're ordering, on a property where you're looking at buying a note is quite a bit different than say getting an appraisal, on a property you're going to buy as your primary residence, where you can't go inside anyways, COVID or not. There's limits on what they can do.
absolute. And in the note industry, I would say maybe an interior broker price opinion is done 1 out of 100 times, because you, as you say, you just don't have access to the interior.
Yeah, the
So,
only time I've had access to the interior is if the property like was vacant and had been secured by the existing lender, but those are corner cases, and I'm personally not targeting vacant properties anyway, so it doesn't really come up for me.
right, right. So with the broker price opinion, pictures of the property, and as you can see, it comes up with an as is value for a 30-day quick sale, or a 90 to 120-day estimated sales price in list price. And then the after repaired value will be increased by what the agent estimated the cost of visual exterior repairs would be. Now, how does a value get determined? As you can see, and I can make this a little bit larger if you need. There you go. In the BPO, it gives the general breakdown, the market conditions, the subject markability, and then it will have 3 recently sold comps within the neighborhood. Now, you've got to be able to compare apples to apples. It's very difficult to have a 3-bedroom subject and a 5 to 6 bedroom comparable. Yes, some adjustments can be made for those kind of things to derive a value, but they really try and get, if you've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on 2.3 acres, hopefully there's something within that neighborhood that is comparable. So here are 3 comparables that have sold hopefully within the last 6 months, and not more than half a mile to a mile out. But you can see here's one comparable that they had to go 8 miles away in this to compare this particular property. But you'll have all the information about the subject. You will have all the information about the comparables. And then, as I said, the adjustments are made for differences between the properties. Then the BPO will also have 3 current listings, hopefully within the neighborhood. And once again, you can see here, there's 2 listings that are within a mile, and another that had to go outside of what generally is acceptable. But if it's explainable in the comments, then it's able to be utilized. So with the information of the recently sold and the current listings, this is how we derive the as is and after repaired value. And then any comments that are made about distance, etc., are addressed by the agent.
And then what's the 30-day quick sale value that it mentions there?
If you have if you're an investor and you just want to get rid of the place, then this is what it would go typically overnight.
Yeah, gotcha.
So continuing on the comments, the QC along with the agent will put in the different reasons and activities and how they derived at the value. You also have a location map showing where the listing and the sold comps are in relationship to the subject.
Oh, so this one is in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yes. And
That's
then,
not my favorite town. Just as a sideline, I rolled through there a few years ago, and there were parts of that, like near the university, was nice, but there were parts of that town that were I thought were kind of sketch. So,
yeah, and sometimes that's why you have to go outside what the norm is on comparables.
mhm.
But part of the broker price opinion will have as many pictures as they can possibly take from the street. This particular property happened to be on a corner, so the agent was able to get a side view. So it gives you a pretty good idea of the area, the street view.
Mm-hmm.
And then the BPO will also have pictures of the comps that were utilized for the sold comparables as well as the listings, so you can compare it to the subject. So a BPO is a great tool, as especially when you're wanting to purchase an asset and not relying on Zillow, Realty Track, etc. These are real eye current visuals.
Yeah, I found like Zillow in particular, just really any of those online estimates, especially for, call it $120,000 properties. I found those to be wildly inaccurate because a lot of times the value just depends heavily on the condition, and some of them are, beat down. Like I've seen examples of properties where Zillow will say it's worth $100,000. In reality, because of where it is and the condition, it could be worth like 20 or 30 potentially. So you got to be super careful with that. Now for like really like higher value, like if you're talking 500,000 plus properties, it seems like it gets pretty accurate. But on that like bottom end, especially sub 100,000, it can be it's almost useless.
Correct. I totally agree. But let's say that you're purchasing an asset and there's enough spread in the deal from the unpaid balance and what you're purchasing it for, and Zillow, etc. You feel comfortable with the value, then I also have another product that can be utilized with a property condition report, and that's an AVM. And what is an AVM? An AVM is an automated valuation method to where it will give you a confidence level on the subject property, keeping in mind that the AVM is all automated and it takes all the listings and the sales in the area to come up with what they feel a comfortable price. And And interestingly, this AVM came up with $55,000. And if you take a look at the BPO on its value, the list price happened to come in at 55,000.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind that the AVM is not, no one has gone out and looked at the subject property. This is just an estimate of what they feel is happening in the neighborhood.
So it's basically kind of assuming average condition, or
Correct.
same condition as the comps that
Correct.
it's using.
Now, this particular client ordered the AVM along with a property condition report, which, Dan, you've ordered multiple property condition reports through BAG for your own assets. When you get the combination, the AVM and the PCR, these are, once again, current pictures of the subject. And in the AVM, it will show different subjects, listings and solds within the neighborhood. What I like about the AVM, along with the property information, sometimes it'll even have borrower information. Keep in mind, this is all automated. The subject sales history, map of all the comparables. But in the AVM, you have your subject, and then it will list multiple properties that have listed and sold. You've got to do a little legwork looking at the listing date, the sale date, the comparisons, keeping in mind that it's not like a BPO where adjustments and everything are made. But the AVM, if you'll see, there's massive on this particular property. Sometimes it's not available, but when it is, it's part of the AVM, and you can see they're all over the place.
Yeah, and you gotta pay attention to the dates too. Like this subject property, I noticed like it has a low sale price, but it was in 2010.
Correct.
You know, so if something's sold in like 2009, 2010, well, one, that's like 12, 13 years ago. But two, the market was so distressed and there were so many REOs on the market, like you got to take those with a grain of salt.
Absolute. That's why I'm saying it's much cheaper than a BPO, but it's also a quick reference of the neighborhood.
Yeah, what I've done sometimes, if I have like a go-to realtor in the area, like somebody I've worked with before, sometimes I'll have the realtor cruise by and give me their quick opinion, and then pull an AVM as like a second.
Absolute.
Yeah, that can be helpful.
Absolute. But I mean, this one's pretty massive, and sometimes the pictures are available, sometimes they're not. But like on this particular one, we're at 39, 42, 45, 47 properties that have sold throughout the years. I mean, here's one in April of 2021, and keep in mind that this was all done in February. So in the property condition report, that is just the pictures of the subject. It's not the AVM attached to it, but this report comes with a property condition report where answering an overview of questions: does it appear the property is visible? Does it appear to be occupied? Yes or no? Just a brief description of the person taking the pictures of what they visually see while they're in front of the property. And then it'll also show market conditions, prior sales, movements, the charts to substantiate everything. And then the actual pictures, once again, of the property. And as you can see, these are pretty clear, crystal pictures. Now, like Dan, you've had orders coming into BAG of property that you currently own that you haven't seen in 5 or 6 months, and ordered the property condition report just so you can see the condition of the property.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, especially if you have a note that's non-performing and maybe it's going through legal, to periodically just get eyes on them. If nothing else, to make sure it's still occupied. Because like I've had loans before where you're going through the legal process and the borrower just takes off at some point. And they don't necessarily tell you. And if you're a place like Indiana where this is, depending on the time of year, you got to watch out for getting it winterized and dealing with potentially frozen pipes and things like that.
Absolute. And as I always say, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And so if you have this property and there's trash in the yard and the grass is up to the windows, you better hurry up and get something done about that, which I can also assist you with. It's called property preservation, because the last thing you want is a code violation slapped on the property.
Yeah, especially if it's a contract for deed or, a land contract, or if you buy it, you're on the property. Like sometimes the local code boards, like they see that it's an out-of-state LLC that owns it, and they are hoping maybe you'll be your piggy bank. Yeah, I've had some. I've talked about it in other episodes, but yeah, I've had some interesting run-ins with local code people.
So as you can see, the property condition report is pretty detailed. So BAG is able to offer you, if you need the value, we can go out, and I do have vetted agents throughout the country to do these BPOs. Sometimes an agent will have to go, that they may be what we call rural. They may be 30, 40, 50 miles away from the subject, which obviously there's additional fees to go in, but a typical BPO is in the neighborhood of $100 for an exterior BPO. Whereas the property condition report that we're looking at is in the neighborhood of $45.
Yeah, and that can be a good savings. Kind of like if you're comfortable reviewing your own comps and you're mainly wanting the photos, then the property condition report is kind of nice.
That and to help you, if you want to attach the AVM to it, which are two separate products. If you ever, on valuation, because BAG also works with a lot of hard money lenders that utilize our service to do appraisals. So we can do a full-blown appraisal, which obviously can get into the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. But those are done by licensed appraisers versus licensed real estate agents.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the 3 things as far as valuation or showing of the property. You've got your BPO, you've got your PCR or property condition report, and the appraisal. Now, if you are ever able to get entrance into the subject, then I either need a lockbox or a POC or point of contact. And then we can do an interior, which definitely gives you a better valuation than what just an exterior does, because you don't know what the interior is going to look
Yeah,
like.
that's one of the big risks, right? With notes. And that's one thing that confuses people who are used to, more traditional real estate transactions. They want to be able to see the inside and do more of a full-blown appraisal, but that's kind of one of the reasons you can buy notes at a discount, right? Like there's this extra risk factor of you usually don't know what's going on the inside.
But generally, and I think you'll probably agree, if the property looks as clean as what this does on the outside, chances are it's not going to be totally wrecked on the inside.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing I've kind of learned too, but if you do see like trash in the yard or bad stuff on the inside, then usually I'm sorry, if you see bad stuff, damage, trash, whatever on the outside, then usually whatever's on the inside is worse.
Absolute. But the bottom line is, as a investor, it's going to cost you a little bit of money to do the quote unquote due diligence, which is the BPO or the PCR, as well as a title search, which we'll be getting into next. But the couple of $100 that you are going to be spending on an asset to do the due diligence prior to purchasing could literally save you thousands and thousands of dollars if
Oh, definitely. And to me, that's just a price of doing business, right? Like in my pricing models, you just bake in, I'm going to have a few $100s in due diligence costs. Now, the thing that can be a little bit of a bummer in the other price of doing business is sometimes you pay for BPOs and pay for O&Es, and then you find problems and you can't close. And so you have to budget a certain amount of money you're going to spend on these things on assets that you can't close on. And so the other thing I'll do sometimes to try to mitigate that, depending on who the seller is, if it's a seller like I know and trust, and I know it's going to be clean, I'll just order the BPO and O&E right away. If it's somebody I don't have a history with, or they have a history of having assets you can't close on, then it's like, okay, I'm doing one at a time. I'm going to order the BPO, and if that comes in, then I'll order the O&E, or vice versa. And my time to close is just going to be a little bit longer. And that's the way it is. Like I've learned the hard way. Like one of the things I did out the gate when I'm starting is, oh, I just got bids accepted on 5 assets from the seller. I'm going to order 5 BPOs and 5 O&Es. And then you find out there are all kinds of problems. So some of that, like my strategy depends on kind of who the seller is.
Absolute. But going back to the couple of $100 out of that 5, if you would have bought all 5 without spending the couple $100 each, you could be down $20,000 or $30,000.
Yeah. And folks shouldn't even think, like, if you're even like thinking about skimping on the due diligence expenses, then you're not going to last very long. Like that's going to go really poorly.
Oh, absolute. And also it's gotten to the point, like with realtors right now, they are so damn busy, they don't have time to drive 3, 4, 5 miles to try and help you out, unless you may already have a relationship with. They're going to ask for some kind of money, especially with gas at what, $5, $6, $7 a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
So as an investor, you also have to understand that these people are there to support you, but not for free.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there's the diligence cost. So this pretty well covers the property condition, the broker price opinion, and the AVM. Now let's take a look at, oh my gosh, look at that. I happen to be the winner of the best BPO valuation in the country, supported by all the clients that utilize BAG. And I might also mention that this PowerPoint doesn't show it, that I won for 2022. So
nice. Yeah. And that's voting from, I think that's the thing that Fred and Tracy Rui put out here. They've also been on the podcast. And that's just a wide swath of note investors voting on that. So that's awesome.
Absolute. You mentioned O&E. What is an O&E? An O&E is a title search, title report. O&E, owner and encumbrances, also can be a current owner search, a two owner search, or a full search. And basically the difference in my experience, a current owner search, if you like dealing in performing loans, typically when you're purchasing a performing loan, a current owner search typically is good because it pertains to what's happening right now. If you happen to have a non-performing note, or this asset has changed hands multiple times, it could have been a quick claim, it could have been a contract for deed, it could have been, in other words, it's got a lot of history, I would highly recommend a two owner search because it goes back further into deed history to pick up any taxes, liens, or judgments. And that is what a title search, title report is all about. You're trying to find, does this property have delinquent taxes? Are there any existing liens on the property? Is it in a bankruptcy? A title search report will tell you anything that is recorded against the property. Keep in mind, I said recorded. So there's times where, like, a water and sewer issue may be there, but it's not the utility folks have not filed a lien against the property. Although, and I'm sure you've run into it, Dan, trying to maybe sell a property that could have an existing water statement due, that some states can put a lien against the property.
Yeah, especially if it's a contract for deed. I've not found the mileage varies depending on the county and the city, but yeah, you could be on the hook. I had, what was it, a $1,500 or $1,800 water bill I had to pay one time in Cincinnati. I think Chris 70 told me he had one that was like over 10K.
Yeah.
One time. So that's that's why also, like, I'll make a phone call to the utilities as well.
One of the services that BAG has separate from the O&E reports are the water and sewer and code and municipality searches, which are a lot of times, once again, not recorded. So we have to physically contact the utility district or the county for those type of violations. A investor will say, well, gee, I can pull a lot of this up online. Yes, you can.
Sure.
But the title search vendors have subscriptions that go even deeper into online information, which is not available typically on a quick glance on the internet. There's also a lot of times where a field abstractor needs to be utilized, where because there's certain areas where it's not online, they physically have to go to the courthouse and obtain all of the documents that are involved in the search. And I'll show you here in a minute when I'm talking about documents. So also I do have some clients. I got one that does a lot of tax sales, and he'll utilize the full search, which goes back to when they laid the slab. And that could range from a 30, 40, 50, 60-year search, depending on the state and the county. But the title search will show ownership. It'll give you the tax information, and then the deed information about the changes from one hand to the other, and any liens or judgments that are recorded. And then I supply a quick synopsis of the tax information.
Mm-hmm.
And then the documents directly from the county about the taxing situation. And then we mentioned documents. In this particular report on this one, we had probably 50 documents that are part of the search. And a lot of it on this particular one is the deed history.
Mm-hmm.
And here's all of the different copies of the quitclaim deeds showing one owner going to the next owner.
Yeah, and a lot of these land contracts that were originated by, like Home Opportunity, like it looks like this one was, or Harbor Portfolio, they've been traded several times over the last 10 years or so.
And personally, that is where I would recommend the two owner search, because it's going to pick up deep history.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can see, and you wonder why is it important to have these? Well, if you got a gap, a 6-month gap between one owner to the next owner, what happened in that 6 month? And so not only do you have these documents, but you need to hopefully at some point understand them, because that's part of your collateral review. And if you do not have the ability or time or the knowledge, one of the other services that BAG is able to help you with is a vendor that will do the collateral review for you. And basically what happens in that, with the documentations that we've just been looking at, they'll tell you what you do have, what you don't have, and what you should have in order to make an intelligent decision on purchasing that asset. Now, like your collateral review, Dan, are you doing it primarily yourself, or are you outsourcing?
No, I'm outsourcing. Or, well, I'm sorry, when we say the collateral review, you're talking about the O&E report or the?
Yeah, the whole collateral package.
Yeah, so I'll order an O&E report, and then I'll go through it myself. Like, I've done enough of these that I tell people I know enough to be dangerous. Like, I can spot most flaws, but I still always like to run it through an attorney to just double check everything, because sometimes you have weird nuances in particular states that I may or may not be familiar with. So
Absolute. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you're dealing in Texas, You don't want a licensed attorney from Ohio telling you about the practices of Texas.
Well, yeah, and hopefully they won't do that even if you ask them. Right?
But
if I tell you what, if I had an attorney that was willing to review something in another state, I would run away because that's not a good sign.
and as you very well know, we have a lot of new investors coming in, and I feel that it's part of, I take it as a responsibility to try and help guide, especially new investors, some of the things that they say, oh, wait a minute, an attorney's an attorney, or a realtor is a realtor, or et cetera, but it's not. And
Yeah.
so, as you can see in this report, though, there are just multiple documents, and all of these documents could affect the viability of this asset.
Nice.
Now, let's assume that you've done, or you're looking at an asset and it's got an O&E report that is only 6 months old. You can also do what's called an update, where we will take the O&E report that you have in the file, as long as it's not over 6 months old. It used to be a year, and sometimes we can go up to a year, but because of so much happening in the marketplace, we try and cut it down to 6 months. But basically what an update will do will show you anything that has been recorded since the date of the O&E report last done. And once again, you can see in the update property information, the parcel number, etc., and then what items were found as being recorded since the date of the last O&E.
Right. So Dickie, we got about like 5 minutes left because Zoom is about to give me the hook.
Oh,
again, but
okay.
or if you had any
quick,
like final thoughts, yeah.
This has multiple documents, but let's assume that you have a title search and it shows that there had been delinquent taxes, and now all of a sudden they're paid. In many instances, you don't know who actually paid those taxes. So there's another product available called a tax deep dive that can go into the taxes and let you know if a possible tax sale has been done.
Yeah, I find these to be really valuable statements. I actually run these on my whole portfolio about every 6 months or so, just as a double check to make sure.
Absolutely.
Because like I've had issues where, taxes are being escrowed and then the borrower starts paying them and the loan servicer doesn't necessarily let you know. I do that just as like a belt and suspenders on my other systems to make sure
if you got a tax lien on a property, or if it could have been a tax sale. Once again, this is where the O&E report may not show that somebody bought those taxes.
Yep.
And then this little report will give you how much is totally owed and what the last day to redeem those taxes are. And those, once again, will vary from county to county, state to state. And this little report only runs $35 plus any hard cost, and hard cost would be any documents from the county that are charged. Yep. So, Dan, that's the two items, or the items that I feel that are at the beginning of your due diligence period that are a must to let you know if it's something that you want to buy or not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Dickie, thanks so much for coming on again. We covered a lot of ground. So let's see, we had the BPO reports, the PCRs, the AVMs, the tax reports, the O&Es. So there's a lot of stuff in there. This might be one for folks to like go back through more than once.
Well,
Potentially,
and also please tell folks that they can go to baldwinadvisorygroup.com, and these are all of the different services which we didn't even touch that are needed by investors.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to that in the notes so it's easy for people to get to. So,
well, I really appreciate it. If anybody needs me, please feel free to reach out. My phone number, 936-447-4170, and my email, dbaldwin@baldwinadvisorygroup.com.
cool. Well, thanks again, Dickie. I'll talk to you again. We'll have you on again soon, talk about some of those other things.
Fantastic. Appreciate it, Dan.
All right.